Hi, everybody. I'm Natalie Balmain, and where do I start? Mixed race, 36-year-old from Manchester. I'm an aromantic. I have type 1 diabetes, and I was diagnosed this year, finally, with ADHD. That happened around the same time that I was doing the show Make Me Prime Minister.
It seems like you had quite a busy year 2022. What was leading up to the diagnosis of ADHD, and how did you realise you have ADHD?
I had an inkling for a long time, from at least the last sort of 10 years, that I had a neurodivergency. It had been misdiagnosed my whole life as depression and anxiety. And depression and anxiety was a really easy way, I think, for doctors to diagnose you, especially because I am 36. I was born in 1986 and I'm a girl. So we know people in this age group, and especially women, we're just not diagnosed. We weren't diagnosed at the right time as children. I had lost my mum to cancer when I was 5 years old. For a lot of doctors, the burnout, the loneliness, those aspects of my neurodivergence were misdiagnosed as, oh, she's lost her mum and she's depressed. I always knew that it was more than that. I spent a lot of time in my life trying to fit in. A lot of people, especially of our parents' generation, don't see that as something to be concerned about. I think there's so many layers to trying to fit in, aren't there? And I think that for me, what I found very difficult to explain was that I knew I wasn't quite the same as everybody else. Other people, so for example, a really great example of this is ADHD. As you know, many people expect you to be physically hyperactive. They understand that as ADHD. I'm not physically hyperactive, but my brain is hyperactive constantly. My brother and I are both the same. We're twins. We both have ADHD. He describes it as being in a television shop where all the televisions are on at the same time, but every single one is on a different channel. That's a great way to describe it. When I was having conversations with people growing up, I would often notice that I would butt in with something that was probably 10 points down the conversation. And people just took that as rude. People just took that as, oh, a girl who can't wait for the spotlight to be on her and for her to be talking. That was what was very apparent to me. And I knew that I couldn't help it. The depression or the burnout that I think I was exhibiting was an exhibition of trying so hard to fit into societal norms that I wasn't trying to break, and I wasn't trying to be rude, and I knew it was rude, but I couldn't help what I was doing. I always knew there was an issue. It wasn't until, and I think this is true for a lot of people, one of my best friends, her little girl, had very similar things to me and ended up getting diagnosed with ADHD and autism.
This story will ring true for many people, and as I've seen about neurodivergence and ADHD, I've seen a lot at the moment. It's starting to be a point where a lot of women and girls who have been undiagnosed or living with ADHD their whole life, and now it's that time where they're starting to find out there's the issue that there's been like your ADHD has been invisible to others around you. It doesn't present as like physical behaviours or some noticeable visible behaviour, but as I say, it's certain things like what's internally going on in your mind, overstimulated. So that's been invisible stuff that can be quite hard to get diagnosed.
It is. I had the added complication when I was 20 of being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And that's when, in the years after that diagnosis, when I'd wrapped my head around that diagnosis, that was when I really started to think about I should try and tackle and get a diagnosis for what is going on up here as well, because it was affecting my ability to manage my diabetes and to care for myself. And that was a big deal, because obviously if I don't look after myself with type 1, I could very easily die. Then I started to go, okay, I need to take measures to look after my ADHD, or I won't be able to look after my T1D.
With ADHD, it's like a point if you're undiagnosed, then that can be like a trigger from your own mental health and challenges with that. As say, it's like, and as type 1 diabetes and managing your physical health, I assume it's with your executive dysfunction challenges that it can be harder to forget to either take insulin, measure your blood levels, and find ways of making sure you manage your physical health around that.
Absolutely. Very regular thing for me. And I'm sure for lots of people with ADHD, is you've got something that's on your mind, but the second you put it down, then it's gone. The amount of times I would give myself my insulin and then I would sit there within 60 seconds and go, did I just give myself my insulin? It's all,
Yeah.
I'm on an insulin pump now, which is much better because it keeps a record of everything, all the insulin I've had, so I can go back and check. I describe having ADHD and type 1 diabetes a bit like walking a tightrope, except the tightrope's on fire, you're on fire, and everything around you is on fire.
And when you were saying some of that, it was interesting because one of the reasons why I'm starting to suspect I have ADHD, or could I say that as you're taking, as you say, your insulin, you was forgetting about it. 60 seconds later after taking tablets, or even shorter, can be like that. If you take my tablets, I normally take with anxiety and mood depression, and then I have to ask whoever's in the room, my mother, sister, I've taken that. I keep on forgetting the simple things.
Yeah,
It can be so stressful, it can impact your day-to-day life then.
it does. And that's the bit that I don't think people are talking about enough, is the burnout. We all know that even for a neurotypical person, the world is difficult right now. People are having to work a lot more hours because of the way that the economy is. People are not necessarily being able to eat enough. They might be losing sleep over anxiety, over paying their bills. So for a neurotypical person, this period of time is stressful. But for a person, people are shutting down. They just go, nope, I can't cope. I can't do this. We need to be talking about this burnout and letting people know that it's okay to take a break. It's okay to do nothing for a bit. Even Christmas has become a time where there's so much. You've got to go to the parties, you've got to do your shopping, you've got to decorate your house, wrap your presents, see all the family. No, that's something that I think is really hard for people with neurodivergencies, because we've spent our lives trying to fit in and trying to be the same as everybody else. That thing of saying, no, actually, I need to support myself doesn't come naturally, I feel.
With going through a period of the pandemic, I think for people who have neurodivergencies, it's been a moment where with it hits a burnout of in lockdown, what you previously been through in your life. So at this point where everything stopped, and I think then I noticed throughout the pandemic that more people started to discover their neurodivergent self.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that came from people finally having the mental freedom, not having to be on the commute every day. And I don't think a typical working day allows a lot of people to be very self-aware about their habits and their behaviors. But in lockdown, they had a lot of time to think about their habits and their behaviors and the way that they did things. Like you said, a lot of people started to put the pieces together.
You were diagnosed last year, so was it in the pandemic that you were able to realise, now this is the time that I went to get a diagnosis?
During the pandemic, I was still working in healthcare. So I didn't actually stop working. For everyone in healthcare, the pandemic, instead of being a time at home and working from home, it stepped up. That was the point where I think everything combined. And I ended up in hospital, major burnout, really bad blood sugars. I was scared because I was in hospital and there was COVID. I didn't want to be in hospital. And I had that moment in hospital, that bit of time, that week in the hospital bed where I went, I really don't want to be here. I don't want to end up here again. And I feel like if I had managed some of these things earlier, I might not have ended up here this time. So that was really profound. I know as a type 1 diabetic, I hold my life in my hands, but that was a moment where I went, I really do hold my life in my hands. I need to be fit to do that. That was the point that I spoke to my GP and I said, I probably should have called you years ago, but I didn't really know how to do this, how to start this. And we got started. I filled in that huge questionnaire, that lovely, great big form that they give you to fill in. And you're there going, this is the worst thing for somebody with ADHD. Give me a big form to fill in. I did it. That was all going on. That process, waiting for the adult pathway and the referral and stuff, while I was doing Make Me Prime Minister. So Make Me Prime Minister was really tough. It was the first series, so none of us knew what we were letting ourselves in for. And we filmed so much more than what actually got shown on TV. I think they had 40 to 50 hours of footage for every 1 hour episode. And there were whole challenges that just didn't make it in. So it was massively stressful. It was massively tiring, long days, one after the other. I think those are the kind of times where people with ADHD and autism can shine. Because I had a hyper focus. It was like the show, nothing else. I wasn't at home. I was staying in a hotel. My dog was with my parents. Like everything else just stopped. So I could go. What was interesting was that I was working with Kelly, who also has autism. And we were talking about stuff. And Kelly she's very prepared. Like that's how her autism benefits her. But when it came to the final, and it was Kelly and Holly and I,
Yeah.
and Adam was my partner, and he was going through everything with me. He said something to me that made me chuckle because I hadn't had a confirmed diagnosis yet at this point. But we went into the final and I showed him my notes. I did my speech, I did my everything. And he went, that is Kelly levels of preparation. And I went, I think I know why. And yeah, what's really great is me and Kelly have a great relationship moving forward from the show since, because we had this little thing where I was going to her, I think I might be, but I've not had and she was like, yeah, you are. And anyway, so after the show all finished and wrapped, I was on the phone to go, yeah, you were right, I am. I've had the diagnosis. But it was interesting to me to go through the show at that point, because it made me realize we have our strengths, we have our talents. We often get put in the same sort of category as people who, they're not expecting much from these people. This category. What I realized is if you are put in an environment that allows you to flourish like that one, you could go on and win the show. And I think I wouldn't have won the show if it wasn't for my ADHD.
What is shown was like the skills and talents of having different backgrounds of people involved in politics, all trying to speak on political issues and give themselves an airtime where, as you say, you can the best of yourself and the best skills of yourself. I could tell you learned a lot about yourself. I can tell with having people like Kelly and Adam, they helped yourself quite a lot.
Absolutely. I made some amazing friends on that journey. It's the thing I'm most grateful for, is the people that I made friends with. But it was a massive journey of self-discovery for me doing that show. And I never in a million years, it was obvious in the final, the look on my face, that I was not expecting to win that thing at all. I just didn't want to be the first to get kicked off. And that was amazing for my confidence. And it was amazing for me at that point to go, I am capable. I can add value. I do have something to offer society. I think for me, that was probably the reason that in the first place. I wanted to prove it to myself more than anyone else that I was capable.
Watching the show, when you got to the final, like, a lot of the people who were getting to the fight, you can tell the journey you've been on throughout the show and how you learned a lot from yourself. And now, like, as I say, you Danny Price, Kelly Given, you've been able to give a lot of yourself and your own experiences on the show and bring yourself to the table on your personal experiences. So I think that's shown through in the show, and how important it is to see people given a platform to. So again, as you say, you were able to tell some of your story of your diabetes and your ADHD and to inform that in some of the policy making and speech making. Please.
Absolutely. As stressful as long as it was, I would do it again in a heartbeat, because I really feel that what I wanted to come out of it, which was to inspire people and give people hope. Because I walked in there and everybody looked at me and they went, oh, there's the loud mank girl from the estate that they've put her in to balance it out. Nobody, I don't think anybody expected me to develop in the way that I did. But that was the whole point for me. I wanted to prove somebody like us could just step up and do it and represent and talk honestly about things that matter to people. If I feel so disconnected from most politicians at the moment. And when you break it down for all the budgets and trade deals and policies and all, if you're not connecting with people, how can you possibly be doing a good job?
With yourself and many people on the series, the cast, we had a big life experience of worked in healthcare. You're like somebody who's been through big challenges to get that diagnosis and get to where you are. And you don't often see that in politics, in the cabinet.
And one of the comments that I feel the experts gave me a couple of times during the show was, don't be so emotional. You've got to be tough. You've got to be this. And my response was, me being emotional is tough, because I'm letting you all know that I don't care that you can see me like this. It doesn't bother me 1 second to show you my vulnerability. And that's my strength. I'm not going to put on an act and put on a front and be a nasty person, because I actually don't consider that a strength. I consider being honest, being frank and being able to be honest, a massive strength. And I feel that does more good in the world than trying to be a Winston Churchill and stick a cigar in my mouth and say, oh yeah, we'll fight him on the beach. No.
I think by the end of the series, you can start to see that how the emotion actually works better for the people who, like the electorate, people who vote, and people who want to get involved in politics. You got that real life experience, and when you with politics and people who are in power, you want to see people in power make changes for ordinary people who, and like yourself, and with, and because you've been through quite a lot to get where you are, you got new, and without emotion, like how are you going to make that change? And like at least you can show that you care about things, and that I think that's where you empathise with people, and that's where you need to be more in empathy and humaneness in politics, really.
Absolutely. There's 2 points actually I want to make on
Yeah.
that. One, this is a very typical trait of people with ADHD and autism, is a
Yeah.
strong sense of justice, a very strong sense of justice,
Yeah.
to the point where I might actually at some points have put myself in danger because I can't help but butt in if I see something that is unjust. I can't help but stand up for people on a bus or whatever it is. So that was the first point. But the second point is, you're absolutely right. I think that we have people in government now who at no point in their entire lives have ever had to clean their own rooms. I think that they grew up in such a lifestyle that they had people that did that for them. And that's a very dangerous mindset to have, because if you've never even had to clean up after yourself, that means that you believe there are people on this earth who are here just to clean up after you. And that is not the mindset of somebody who runs a government or leads a country. It's just not acceptable.
You've been able to show your emotion and get emotionally involved with it, but did you find you've been able to see things within politics that how you saw as what could be barriers for neurodivergent and disabled people from getting into and being elected into politics? And what was the things you learned about how neurodivergent and disabled people can get involved in politics and find places in politics more accessible?
What I discovered from doing the show is that there's a real need, and there is a clear way that people with neurodivergencies can get involved in politics. But then it's the level that you want to get to, then you're going to have to start making safety net plans for yourself. You might have to try and find coping mechanisms to deal with things, because at the grassroots stage, you're engaging with people, fine. You get to become a local councillor. Again, there's lots of grassroots campaigning. That's wonderful. Once you get to becoming an MP or even serving in cabinet, there's a huge amount more to MP debating, teamwork, and trying to reach negotiation and reach a decision. And at that point, that's the bit that I found I struggled with, and not because of my ability to deal with people, but because of other people's ability to understand neurodivergent. And that was the point that I went, okay, in this room, I've just got to accept that this person doesn't get it. And I've just got to find a way of saying what I'm saying that resonates with them, because they're just not, the passion, the emotion, they're just not getting it. So I think that absolutely we need more.
Yeah.
And look, more people that we do get in from grassroots level and bring them up, the more that we're going to solve this issue for all of us when we get to these kind of positions. And I would love to see somebody with autism, ADHD in cabinet, maybe even prime minister. But there's definitely got to, and I always talk about this, a collective energy where we come in en masse for our own sake. One person trying to blaze the trail on their own, they're going to get burned out. And that's really why I wanted to do it on the show, because I really wanted to build us our little neurodivergent army of people who go, actually, I could do that too. She did it, so why not?
Yeah, that's quite important, something important to do, as when we hear about Westminster, that bubble in media, you hear about it as if it's like some sort of way from the rest of the country. And then that's something that needs to be changed steps. And because if you've got ADHD, autism, and anxiety, mental health conditions, and minorities, that
absolutely. I think mainstream media have got a lot to answer for, and a lot that they need to step up and do in terms of how we talk about things like this in a manner that is understanding the collective energy. I'm going to keep coming back to this collective energy thing, because more and more we've been isolated by just the way that the world has progressed in certain ways, and certainly the pandemic and various other things. As I talked massively about community in the final, I wouldn't be doing any of this if it wasn't for community. And I think that needs to be represented. I talk about representation so much, being a mixed race girl with 2 hidden disabilities and aromantic and all of this. I don't see us represented in a way that is real.
Beyond what you see in the media, popular culture and arts areas and creative industries, but when you look at people in power and politics, you don't see no actual representation, as you say, like gay romantic or like certain like LGBTQ like people, to as say you were saying about your 2 disabilities and being a mixed race woman from Manchester, like you don't really like see from your background something as unique as your own background represented in power in politics. And I'll say that it's good and important to have the arts and media representation, but it's now, as saying about the collective movement you went to work on, that it's creating ways of going beyond that and taking it into power in politics.
To show people that all of these things, I consider them a bit like brownie badges. None of them define me. I'm not just diabetic. I don't just have ADHD. I'm not just mixed race. I'm a combination of all of those things. And that is a unique experience. There is no one else. That is what's lacking in the representation, is to go, we could tick this box and this box if you want to put it like that. But when you bring all of those things together, it's something completely unique. And I say this about being mixed race as well. I'm not this or that. I'm both. You can't just take one culture and say, oh, that's your, because it's not. I know you can't take another and say, oh, I'm not either of them. I'm both, and that's very different.
Tick boxes, it's not to be portrayed, it's just boxing for tick boxing's sake. It's about, as you were saying, to find ways of seeing the value in having different people from different backgrounds, as the shows cleverly did, as the importance of actually making things work for people. As you say, if there's nobody in politics with ADHD in the government, then, as you say, that school systems with mental health support, that won't be there for ADHD people. And as you say, they probably would say the system would fail. And it's about valuing skills to get involved politics from different.
Absolutely. It's really interesting because my initial big idea in episode 1 for education was way bigger, but it got broken down by the constraints of the brief, having to get other team members to agree with it and various things. But actually my original idea for education in episode 1 was that we scrap the national curriculum for primary school altogether. Primary school is used as a period of time to understand and assess a child's needs, give them exposure to loads of different lessons, things that they might not otherwise get exposure to until high school. Expose them to all of it, expose them to different learning styles, visual, audible, kinesthetic learning styles, understand what works for them. And then by the time that children get to high school, they're grouped into classes that are based on their learning style, the types of subjects that they naturally enjoy or are naturally able at, or both, and change it like that so that we're making the most out of everybody rather than trying to make everybody fit into one box. We all know that we can't, because then you make the best out of a percentage of your population, and the rest of your population spend their life thinking that they're stupid and they've got to do any job that they can get to make money, which is not conducive to living a fulfilled life. It doesn't make people happy.
It's like trying to find the best of a person, what's the skills and working with a person's abilities. I say that is something good to focus on. And one thing you've probably found about doing this show is, I guess you had loads of different ideas and things that was focused on in the show that just never came to air.
It was hard working with people when we were all so different. Trying to get your team, first of all, had to buy into your idea before you could sell it to the public. It was a bit of an eye-opener for me. Sometimes we can be so passionate about something that we just see it from, that was the view that we're looking at. There were a couple of times people opened my eyes and they went, but what about from looking at it from this angle? And I went, oh, okay, that was great. It was a really wonderful example of how you could take a group of people from wildly different backgrounds and bring them together to work on a common goal. Maybe it might have been easier to go through some of that stuff knowing. But like I said, I knew already, I just didn't have a confirmed diagnosis of ADHD. Like many people who've had late adult diagnoses, you've already built coping mechanisms throughout your life to manage how you behave in a work environment and all the rest of it. I had my coping mechanisms. I still think that there were moments where I couldn't help myself and I very overstimulated in certain parts of it, and I would just be like, having spent so many years building coping mechanisms, I was able to use it to my advantage in the show. Like I said, towards the end, certainly in the final, I had studied my policy and everything around it like a mastermind subject. It was one of my issues that I can only focus on one thing at a time. I get very stressed out if I have to think about what's coming up next. I just focus on the thing that I'm doing, and I don't give any thought to what I'm doing next until I'm doing it. And then when I'm in that space, then my brain is on that. So I think that played well throughout the show, because everybody else naturally, I think humans go, okay, it's episode 1. And then if I get through episode 1, I get to episode 2. But I didn't, because my brain couldn't think of that. And actually towards the end, even one of the outtakes, one of the interviews that I did to camera, they asked me, what are you going to do if you win? I couldn't answer. I started to get a little bit upset at the question. I said, I'm sorry, but my mind won't allow me to think about if I win. I haven't got there yet. I can only think about this, think about the debate and what I'm doing. But if I do win, feel free to ask me that question then, because my mind will be on it.
Yeah, I get probably to this way, I guess it was quite anxious and overwhelming. I guess from like when you were asked that question, and I seen it's the first series of this show, and I guess doing a reality so we that, I guess you didn't know what would happen next naturally from that. And I guess even as I say with ADHD, it's hard enough to, it's easy enough to hyper focus and try your best to focus on here and now, and that's, as I said, one of the coping mechanisms. But I can imagine from doing so like that, it's hard to know what comes next around the corner. So I guess from that, I guess that must have been quite some bit stressful doing that.
Fear of the unknown is a massive thing for me, and not knowing the plan, what's coming next, is really difficult for me. And that's something that only people who know me would know this. Having won the show, people obviously naturally very excitedly want to go, what's next? In the immediate aftermath, I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. Channel 4 and other people wanted to see what the public's reaction was going to be to various things. And I just didn't know what the next stage would be after that. I got quite stressed out about it because people were asking the question. When they asked the question, that drew my mind to it. And when it drew my mind to it, I don't know. And I couldn't say it in a way that, I don't know why, but like I could have just been like, I don't know. And people would be like, oh, I'm sure you'll find out soon. My brain it came out so obvious that I was stressed and upset about it that people go, oh shit, tell me what's wrong. I'm like, there's nothing actually wrong. I just don't know. That's what's wrong.
Yeah. The thing is, it's like when also it's totally different from say a bake off or pottery food down or whatever. I always take the competition reality. So it's like the thing, if you're in that, can get work with baking and pottery work and such like that. But when it's something like doing a Prime Minister programme, as you say, it's like something that it's no like directly answer for work afterwards, especially with first series. But since it's as a thing, it's focusing on a democratic role and something in politics, I guess you was thinking, it's hard to think what does come after it then.
I still would very much to do campaigning and all of that stuff. But as we know, being an MP is not professionalized, although they do receive a salary. It's the likelihood of me even being able to stand as a candidate for MP is going to be at least a couple of years away. So what do I do? And I really hoped that as a result of doing the show, that I would be able to do more broadcasting work that aligned with neurodiversity and hidden disabilities, and that kind of opened it up. The very question that you asked me really early in the beginning was about how do people get involved in it. I really thought that these were things that were interesting topics for discussion. And I don't know if some of those things are still going to possibly come, but all I can say is all of the stuff that I've done so far off the back of the show has been me going out and reaching out and doing stuff about it. And one of my aunties, and bless her, okay, she's my auntie, so
Yeah.
she's got the goggles on and she sees me as like way more amazing than I actually am. But she said to me, she was like, I don't understand it. She was like, I don't understand why Channel 4 haven't done more with you. And because basically, I don't know if you saw this, some people in my family were a bit offended that Channel 4 had their alternative Christmas message done by an AI robot. And they were like, but they've got their alternative prime minister. They could have done their alternative Christmas message. And one of my aunties, bless her heart, she went, I suppose you do look a little bit like Meghan Markle, and probably Britain doesn't want to hear from somebody that looks like Meghan Markle. Like I said, she thinks I'm way more amazing than I actually am. But I went, oh, I don't know. But I still believe that there's a massive space for these conversations. And I do believe there's a massive space for somebody in broadcasting who can just be really forthright, as my dad calls it. It's a nice way of just laying your cards out on the table. But yeah, somebody can be emotional and honest. And that's why I've been really grateful for people like you who've reached out and said, let's have a chat about it, because it's so important. Language is so important. Normalizing stuff is so important. Acceptance and inclusivity is so important. I just want to do as much of this as possible. And you know what? Hey, if one person listens to our conversation and goes, ooh, they've got a point there, great.
And the thing is, yeah, that's one of the points I also have to run to do this podcast, is be able to find a space where you can talk about issues that are important to the guests, have the chance for them to tell their stories and how they went to make things better for neurodivergent and disabled people, or any type of background they come from, different intersectional, marginalised backgrounds. Have a space and a voice where we can talk about important things like this. Now, as I say,
I had somebody say to me recently that they didn't like labels that we give things nowadays. That was their labels. And my answer to that was, labels are the first step in understanding and community. It's an identity. It's not trying to box somebody in and say you're just that or you're just this, because I've said it already during this conversation, I'm not defined by any of these things. But the label helps you to A, have some self-awareness and some understanding of what your challenges are. But B, it helps you to find that community. And to me, that is something that I don't want to see lost in. And I talked about it again in my final debate about globalization. It's great. Globalization is wonderful. Trade, travel, fuel, Starbucks, whatever. But none of that should be at the cost of local community. None of that should be at the cost of being able to just catch up with people and have a support group and have a safety net and have a network. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, that seems to be how it works. The more that the globalization happens, the less investment goes into the little individual community things. And that's why I went on the show. That's why I want to talk about what I'm doing. And that's what I ultimately believe in. We have lots of different communities. We have our geographical communities. We have our support communities. Like I have my neurodivergent community on Instagram. I have a type 1 diabetes community. All of those things require time and investment, all of them. And it's easy to say that's the fluffy stuff, the nice to have stuff. It's really not. To me, it's the fundamental stuff. Because everything becomes harder in isolation. And if the last 2 years didn't show us that, I don't know how else to explain.
I was saying, like, everything just come harder for isolation, and as you're saying, that you didn't have that label or, well, words like ADHD or like certain part of the identity that is hidden and you will have to discover yourself. Then I say that can be quite isolating then, and I say it's about, there's so much more to a person. It's like, I say it's like yourself is kind of like a bit of a tree. You got all different parts to yourself. So there's a lot to yourself, that you're not just one thing, you're many different things. And as you can hint in of that. And so as saying it's like a lot more than just a label, and it's important to make sure that you have that community. And I guess I can see from what you're trying to do after the show is trying to work on like different campaigns and be able to create a public platform where you can speak out on things that are important to you, as you're saying that, like in things like local community support, to rights for people, diabetic and ADHD people, as there is into the program we had from ideas bubbling with schooling and how to get that working for different age people. And then as an aromantic and mixed race person, you want to be able to speak on injustices on different parts of your identity.
That's it. It all comes down to one fundamental thing that I believe, which is that people fear what they don't understand. When you don't understand something, it's scary.
Yeah.
And that can apply to something within yourself or something within other people. If you don't understand that you've got ADHD, it can be very scary. That diagnosis can be very comforting. When other people don't understand each other's challenges, it's scary to them. They're going, why is that person acting that way? If we can normalize these conversations, if we can talk about, because nobody looks at me and sees ADHD, nobody looks at me and sees type 1 diabetes. So it's very easy to make an assumption. And then if they see me struggling, they go, look at that fit and healthy girl. What's she having a tantrum about? Actually, I've got type 1 diabetes and ADHD. I'm not having a tantrum. I'm having a meltdown right now. It's very different. I think that I want to talk to people. I want to be open. I want to be vulnerable. I want to show them there's a strength. I want to put some ideas out there. I'm not arrogant enough to believe that I'm going to change the world. But what I do hope is that I might spark a brain that might change the world one day. And we can only do that by being open and being honest. Let's just do more of this.
Yeah, I was saying, I think for you, it's more about ball rolling on certain things. It's having these conversations at least can change certain people's perceptions and start to change a few people's minds. As you say, you can't change the world in given big event. It's important that you do these small things, and like when you're talking about, as I say, like marginal, and that don't get represented, and I guess it then comes quite hard, and like as I say, important to start finding a space where you can speak and be a space where you can be heard on these type of things. Or as with ADHD and certain things like that, there's not much conversation around it in a positive way in the media. As when you talk about these things, like in mainstream media, it's like certain parts of identity and identity politics, it tends to be in a quite polarizing type of way and quite pitted against each other. And so we really think you were trying to do and hope to do is like put an alternative way of doing it.
Absolutely. And bringing people together. And I talked about this in the show as well, which is that identity politics, it's a great technique for winning a vote, great for campaigning, not so great once you're actually in power and you need to bring people together on an issue. You've already divided them, sometimes very closely down the middle. So then how do you get people to come together to work on issues if you've already divided them into different camps? It just doesn't work. What I showed in the language that I used and the way that I spoke in both of my debates. In episode 1, I came up against Darius and I won by 72%. And that was an audience that was 40-something% Conservative voters, 30-something% Labour voters, however many percent Lib Dems, SNP. So to get 72% of the vote meant I'd brought together people of different voting backgrounds. And again, in the final, that was a 3-way vote. Holly got 21%, Kelly got 27%, and I got 52%, again, in an audience made up of that same split. So again, you're bringing together people of different voting backgrounds. So it's not impossible. People are not completely against each other. It's just that the rhetoric and the language that parties use make people feel that way. And that's absolutely not the case. If you speak to people in a way that is empathetic and understanding and reasonable and not aggressive or hostile, you'll find that actually a huge proportion of the people in front of you actually agree.
With doing this show and the bits that are not shown on TV, it was a lot easier to have these conversations and persuade people's minds and have that open dialogue and conversation, because as you said, there's so much footage you filmed for an episode. As you were saying earlier, you were doing 40 or 50 hours on a task, I think you said that earlier. So it's that thing that if you got the more time and space that you can talk to people and campaign on these things, it's a lot more easier. But as you're saying, one thing you probably found out doing the show is that when it goes out on TV and you only see the 40 minutes of it or a certain clip of the debate, then it becomes a lot harder. And so what was it like, what's kind of started to see the perceptions off the program as to when you were recording to the people in the audiences in the room?
I think that in this example in
Yeah,
particular, it was really tough for everybody involved because it was the first series. So nobody knew exactly how it was going to play out. And I think that what the show creators had done was to create lots of challenges for every episode, not knowing what was going to end up looking good, what was going to end up getting pulled off or not getting pulled off or whatever. So it was a lot of experimentation. And for example, in the first episode, what you essentially saw was we're each given a task to create an educational policy. We develop it, we write scripts, we do a media launch, and then we go and debate in front of the public. But there was a whole other challenge actually in episode 1 that the public never got to see at all, which was that halfway through developing our policies, the prime ministers were called outside and they were ambushed by a group of angry farmers who wanted to know what the prime minister was going to do about the net carbon zero crisis. And you're on the spot and you have to negotiate with these farmers. And that was a challenge in itself, a mini challenge that throws you off your game halfway through doing the main challenge. Nobody even got to see that. That got cut completely. That just gives you an idea of, as the public, as the viewer, you think, okay, they've been given this one thing. That's all they've got to think about. Well, they didn't do a great job. We had about half an hour to do the policy bits. Then you get thrown into something else. Then it's onto doing the media launch, whatever. So it was really tough. And aside from the whole challenges that got cut out, even the bits, we were given half an hour sometimes to come up with a policy. This is something that in real life, politicians would spend months developing. And we're doing it in half an hour on camera and having to have discussions out loud. And the producers talk more, you're umming and ahhing. And you're like, oh, I've got to talk and think. And so it was a lot. And when you see that back as somebody who was there, obviously, I think everybody in one episode or another was upset that something hadn't made it in or had made it in, or, oh, they made it look like I said this, but actually what I said in its entirety was this, which comes out different. But that's the nature of the game. It wasn't malicious. It was simply that you have 50 hours of footage and you've got to make a 47-minute program out of it. And not only that, you've got to make the program make sense and flow.
Yeah.
So it was a really hard job for the editor.
Yeah.
And it was, I think everybody at some point felt like the edit didn't show enough or put some things that made something look slightly out of context. For me, my one was episode 3 in the crisis room. I felt like a lot of people were saying that I was being mean to Kelly. Now I want to clear this up right now, because A, it was a crisis room. The tensions were really high, but B, it was definitely back and forth. There was a back and forth there, but for whatever reason in the edit, the dialogue made it seem like, so there was a lot of Kelly that was cut. There was a lot of Kelly that was cut in that episode, including her laughing at me, which kind of made me go, don't laugh at me. So then you saw me being quite sharp with her, and people were like, why are you being so sharp with her? Like, that was mean. You didn't need to do that. But actually, you didn't see the little spark that set it off. So, but look, me and Kelly are fine. We're all good. We're fine now. We watched it and we were texting each other going, oh, look at this. Oh, look at this. And I was like, how dare they not show you? And she's, so everything's cool.
I know you were saying you're the best of friends now, and you're all good. No, you would be. As you're saying, it's, I guess, when you were in the Cobra style room and doing all that, like, crisis, like, certain thing, like, pressure task, like that. It seemed something that was super stressful, and I guess watching that back as a viewer, you kind of got to think that, I'd say, with the 40-minute things, out of so many different things you don't get to see because of the ad breaks, and you only get that sort of bare time, then you end up cutting some things out that would have made it look a bit more sense and perspective as a viewer. I guess that was quite super stressful then in that space. As you say, you never let the unpredictableness of, like, certain things, and like certain things change, and you like to be in the here and now, and then they can be quite stressful if you like planning certain things out, and then all of a sudden then something steps up. As I remember the Oxnard episode, and then there was a few moments on camera that you would see another different crisis or a certain thing happening.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And another great example is the final debate. Holly and Kelly and I were actually on that stage for 2.5 hours doing our debates and our questions and our speeches. That's without the shots of us walking in and the cutaways and the interviews and the battle buses. That was just the final debate. So you really get a sense now of like how much that is cut down. And that's not just for this show, that's just television. They're looking for the little sound bites. They're looking for the bit in what you said that just really just flows, sounds good or exciting or wild.
Like that can be quite engaging and emotive. Like I was just saying, trying to pick out the highlights because, as you say, if it's 2.5 hours, that the typical, like a 2 hour or 3 hour final, so we go next, and you only get that airing on TV. I think sometimes it's a thing where you could felt like you could watch a bit more, but as I say, it's just they give you as a person watching it.
Yeah. I still think that they could bring out a whole behind the scenes show. They could bring out a second show about that show just based on stuff that was cut out. I don't think they will though.
Yeah, like sometimes like this, I always think with reality shows, like sometimes you want to have a bit more like behind the scenes bits or like extra bits, like what goes on.
I used to love, my favorite thing about filming the show was our medic. So we had a lovely medic named Kingsley. So if Kingsley watches this, hi Kingsley. And every day you'd get there and there'd be a moment where you're all dressed and ready and about to go on camera. And that's the bit where you get a bit nervous, just the bits waiting. And every day that I saw Kingsley, he'd be like, and he was just brilliant. He just made it so much better. So there you go. Shout out to Kingsley.
Yes, it does help to probably have a nice familiar face you probably chat to in doing the tasks then. I'll say that probably made you feel a bit more relaxed then, is it?
Yeah. I think the behind the scenes bits, definitely in the green room and stuff like that, that's where you get to kick back for a bit, especially when you've got your mic taken off. Because those mic packs are quite big and bulky in the back of you, so you can never really sit down properly. So that bit where you get your mic pack off and you sit down, and we'd all have these little boxes of hot food delivered for lunch and stuff like that. That was great.
Ah, great. And since you were talking about school policy early on, that you said you had changed the curriculum in primary school education, and just made a note of this. What was your like experience in school having ADHD and being neurodivergent?
It was tough. I had a really tough time at school, and I definitely was one of those people who left school thinking I was stupid. 100%. For me, there was a lot of things that were happening at school. One of them was my inability to understand why I didn't behave like other kids, why I was a bit all over the place. I got some weird names because of it as well. Not weird names, but not very nice names like Scatty Natty and things like that, because they just thought I was just all over the show. But what I discovered very quickly was that if I found something that I enjoyed, I was very good at it very quickly. So I focused on that. I loved doing drama. I loved English literature. So what I focused on, and I think that was very obvious when I left school, my grades, I got like A stars in these like couple of subjects and like Fs in everything else.
Yeah, I was just saying that it's easy being able to divergent, it's then that skill on that you can be able to hyper focus, or then you have certain focused interests, as you explained there when you was in school. And as I say, and it can be quite challenging then if you like as like excel in certain areas and then areas can be behind. A common thing for people.
The thing is that what's really sad is that I've proven now as an individual example what you can get if you actually support people with neurodivergence to make the best out of who they are as an individual. Because when I left school, as I said, I was one of those people that thought I was stupid. So I got a job as office admin. I just filed things and put letters in envelopes and put stamps on them. Like that's what I did. And I did that for a long time, from when I finished school until my late 20s. That's all I did. And I remember going for an interview when I was 27 and they did these competency tests. Now, I'm going to have to go back to this company and find out exactly what these tests were, but there were things like reasoning and logic and various other things, problem solving and or personality profiling. I remember after people had done their tests, middle managers were coming out and doing interviews with people. One of the directors came out, and I knew he was one of the directors because he'd introduced himself to the group at the beginning of the day. He came out and pointed at me and he went, "You." Why does the director want to interview me? And he sat me down. He said, I wanted to talk to you myself because your test results were very interesting. And I said, oh, yeah. He said, you got 27 out of 30. And I went, oh, so I could have done a bit better then. He looked at me and he went, the national average is 12. That was the first time in my life at 27 or 28 that I went, what? You mean does that mean I'm smart? No, think about it. At 28 years old, I've missed out on a decade of my adult life. I'd missed out on a decade of being able to contribute. Because after that I ended up working in healthcare. I think if I had that confidence, I could have given 10 more years to our NHS than I did. I could have been doing it. I could have been further. It could have been better for anybody. I could have been in the NHS sooner. I could have been further up in my career by 28 than I was. None of that happened. Nobody had benefited from me because school had let me believe that I didn't add value.
As you say, your ADHD didn't present in quite a visible way, as the effects of it felt more internalized and over, because that had not been picked up, and not teachers wouldn't know other employers were to then, and it's the effect of not getting the diagnosis beforehand. That happens a lot for women and girls who have ADHD or that like loud and disruptive naughty presentation. That's the general ableist view of what ADHD is. Then it can on your life and when to be able to change that perception.
I think it's obviously going to be a long-term thing. The tide isn't going to change overnight. But what I think is really interesting is, I think part of the problem that we have at this moment in time, is that we have a lot of adults who are a lot older than us. So we're talking people in maybe their 60s, 70s, who probably are also neurodivergent and have never been diagnosed. And so when you talk to them about your issues and you said, this is part of my ADHD, they're almost the worst for brushing it off and going, oh, this nonsense, all these things that people are diagnosed with now, we weren't diagnosed with it back in my day. And my response is always the same. And I just say, I'm sorry that you have had to struggle with this and that you think that this is just something normal that you just have to get on with and cope with, because we can all do better than that. We don't have to just get on with it and just cope. We're moving forward into a time where you can thrive and flourish with these things. You can be the best thing that you can be. That's what I think is hard for the conversation, is we have these group of people who almost don't want to accept that we have this knowledge and this understanding now, and probably because things that are traits of ADHD and autism are things that they see as totally normal because they actually have it themselves, and they've never been supported. They've just, like I said, they've just coped. And so they have this thing where, oh, don't be ridiculous. That's just normal. Just cope with it. We can do better than that.
It reflects change of mental health and neurodivergence, like past trauma or like struggles in your life. It's like changing to a point where we can start to look at solutions to fix it, whereas, as you were saying 10 years ago, it would have been a bit more of a step up lip reports and just keep calm and carry on and don't talk about these things.
Absolutely. And even my own dad, is such a wonderful, understanding, open-minded person. He is the most least judgmental person ever. But even he, when I was trying to talk to him about it, said, think about soldiers back in the day, love, when they came back from war. They were awfully traumatized. They just had to get on with it. I said, Dad, that's absolutely true. What you're saying is not incorrect. But what you're forgetting is that a lot of these traumatized soldiers who just had to get on with it ended up having with alcoholism or addiction issues or becoming suicidal. And that's because they weren't supported. The only difference now is about talking about it is that we can be supported and we can do better and we can stop people from dealing with the side effects of coping, because it's a side effect of coping. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's like whatever life experience you had when you're starting to grow up, and you had from your childhood as you intern from your parents' experience, where the social attitudes are off the time when you're growing up, or like whether like with your parents, and it's like pass on and like throughout your life, and it does affect you throughout your life. From my parents' experience, your father has referenced the soldiers of the war. I think the social views of the day then, and where your parents go through it is not gone through like how you do things throughout your life, and the impact of starting to fix the problems that you maybe have had for years and decades, the struggles and trauma then was quite like thing that takes a while.
It is. It's really, and I think that we have to try and take a strategic look at this to be
Yeah.
understanding on every part where we are. We're limited by our experiences. And so I think for the older generation, that the best thing that they can do is to just try and be non-judgmental and to open their minds to the fact that this is a part of progression. We're always going to, older people should always expect to misunderstand part of the younger generation, because that's a sign that we're progressing as a society. And on the flip side too, I always say to people, we should expect our ancestors don't live up to our standards. That's absolutely right, because that's proof that we've progressed as a society. We've improved, we've got better. So absolutely, there has to be that understanding. Older generations will be limited by their experience. For us, we're feeling our way through it, but hopefully the result is that we then make it easier for the people who follow us.
I'm learning stuff and you're learning stuff, and yes, we're continually learning stuff about our community, our identities and ourselves. Is there anything else you want to say, as well?
That's a really nice point to end on, actually, I think, which is that it's this progression, and I want to be part of it. I know we're probably not going to see the results of it in our lifetime. To talk about the long term and the progression, we should expect to find that we have higher standards than the people who came before us. And we should also expect that the people who come after us will have higher standards than we do, because that's how we know we're progressing as a society. But we all have to find acceptance in that, I think. And that's to accept that generations before us probably won't have the understanding of things that we have. And we have to accept that and understand that they're limited to their life experiences in some ways. And for us, we have to accept that we're finding our way through things, and there are things that we're going to get right and things that we're going to get wrong. But hopefully the end result of that is that we've made things even better for the people who come after us, and they feel more supported and they're able to make more out of their lives and who they are and what their natural talents and skills are.
As I was saying, it's like accepting that there's an evolution for the generations, that as saying culturally, socially, we progress and learn things and try to make ourselves better people by learning. And as we're saying, it's just about listening and realising as humans we make errors and being able to learn from mistakes, humans, and just like progress on kind of into that.
Yeah, because we put so much pressure on ourselves, all of us do.
Yeah.
Because we live in a world where we're all trying to be more understanding and more aware. But none of us can possibly be already aware and understanding of things that we don't know. We all have to go through a learning process. And I think what's really my message to everybody at the moment is to just try and take any feeling of embarrassment out of your learning process, because we all have to do it. We all know what it is to feel embarrassed when you don't understand something, or when you accidentally put your foot in it because you haven't realized that somebody has a certain way of being addressed, or whatever it is. Like we know that you're going to have to learn, but let's just be accepting for ourselves, but also be accepting for others, and take that embarrassment away from them and say, listen, we get it. You put your foot in your mouth, but we've explained it, and now you won't put your foot in your mouth next time because you just learned, and that's how we grow.
It's still, as you say, it's just about accepting that and being willing to not make the same mistake twice, and as I say, not putting your foot in it like several times again. And as long as you don't do that and just try to remember what you did wrong before, then that's how you'll be able to progress, and that's the only thing things can be made better.
Absolutely. Listen, I hope that people look at me and they go, oh yeah, clearly she's a girl that cares about people. But I've made mistakes, right? I have a friend, okay? Now, when I first met this friend when we were young, we were both girls. This friend has now gone through a process and is now changed their name and identifies as he, him. And I swear to God, there was an occasion not long ago where I was just off the cuff having a comment, and I was like, yeah, girl, because I'd known that person as a girl for many years. That wasn't, he knew I wasn't being offensive. He knew I wasn't being a horrible person to him, because he just knew that I was like, said it without thinking. And all he did was go, not a girl. And I was like, oh, sorry. Ooh, I did that. He's like, look at me. And I'm like, yeah, I know I can see you're a guy. I know. I don't know why I said, But that's the thing, it's the
Yeah.
context, isn't it? He knew I wasn't being offensive.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to diminish his identity. I just simply had known him for many years before his transition.
And the thing is, as I say, and it's about finding the empathy and being able to think that as you were talking with the TV show and the like stuff in your life, there's a lot of learning about other people, learning about yourself, and as I say, it's about a lot of with as saying with that, you were able to empathise, and as saying if you make a mistake, it's about empathising with that person, as I say that accent, as you said, it's just something slips out your mouth as just like as you say, a girl sometimes it's quite like just like a phrase you did not intend it, but at least by then you felt that.
Oh my God, I felt awful. Like
Yeah.
it stabbed me through the heart that I'd done it. And that was the thing that my friend obviously saw. He was like, she wasn't even thinking when she said it, it was just words that came out. But he could see my pain. He could see I was absolutely distraught that I'd done that.
Yeah. But I think that's like an important point of any as that kind of reflects on with very like systemic stuff that can be in a society how like there is as say certain racism, ableism, transphobia, etc. With that stuff, it's important to actually feel that empathy, as you say, and that feel that bit of emotion just to say, oh, hold on, I made it, and as I say, and not like trying to argue it, fight it, ignore it. And as I say, as we were saying earlier, things can get quite polarized, and some people don't want to admit and take a mistake and actually listen and learn. As you say, that there's the intergeneration thing, and as saying that with the point of talking about different parts of your identity, and you want to be able to do that through broadcasting. I can tell like when you trying to change that narrative, as we were saying earlier. So at least you're able to notice that and have the empathy just to think about things differently.
And like I said, all of us are a product of our experience.
Yeah.
And there's no way that I'm going to know what it's like to be you. I've never lived your life. Even if we both have neurodivergencies, even if we're both from Great Britain, whatever, your combination of experiences are unique to you. And my combination are unique to me because we're all this multifaceted thing. So we're going to make mistakes. We're going to say something and have at some point in our life, have our eyes opened by somebody else who saw that same event from the other side. And the way that I like to describe it to people is we all saw the Oscars slap. I think everybody in the world saw Will Smith slap Chris Rock around the face at the Oscars. We all saw it on the same camera with the same video. We saw the same event, but everybody saw it differently. Everybody had a different point of view about why that had happened, whether it should have happened, whether it could have been done differently, who was to blame, who was this. And that's my point to people. We can all see the same thing, but see it completely differently because of who we are, because of our combination of unique experiences. So that's all you have to understand when you're looking at any of it. It's just that you could both be looking at the same red gate, but one of you says it's red and one of you says it's blue. You're both right, probably.
I'd say that it's like something to think of as if you're like seeing something like the Oscar slap and something like that, where certain things that happen in headlines, I'd say how certain people behave. As saying it's like a point of like ethics and morals of like how people see things differently, right and wrong, and it's about like as I was saying, you have conversations and you listen. I know you do, and it's about being able to take upon whatever people have said in your group experiences, and then be able to work out what's right from that. And I guess it's different. And then I understand it can be quite difficult then if so many people got so many hundreds or different ways of looking at one thing to know which is the right way of looking for thing, or what is the right thing to start bit of digging on that. Find that time within yourself just to reflect on what's right and wrong.
Absolutely. And I sometimes feel like I need to tell this to people as well, which is that for me, right and wrong, again, is a bit of a spectrum.
Yeah.
Because I, for a long point time in my life, was an unhealthy people pleaser. Now, I could have, and I did for a long time, saw that as doing right. I was doing right because I was making people happy. And that's great. That's noble. That's wonderful. But was it right for me? Because what I was doing was expending all of my energy into doing things that other people wanted, to being what other people wanted, to living how other people wanted. And it completely sucked the soul out of me. So I think people have to have that balance, like you were saying. Establish what is right and wrong for you. Because an element of it, and I always considered it self-care to be selfish. That's how I'd programmed myself, or my experience had programmed me. So we have to remember, we have to take that away again a little bit and say, self-care, looking after yourself, especially your neurodivergence, especially your physical health conditions, whatever, allows you to be the best version of yourself. Now that is what's right for other people. Giving other people the best version of you, that's what's right for them. Not just doing everything that they want at the detriment of you. That's not right.
Yeah, I was saying, it's like, I think when you were saying that about the experience of, as I was, as I saying, the experience of talk, I was trying to remember, sorry, what you was just saying with the experience of, I don't know, can you remind me of some of the things you were just saying, just so we can.
Oh, it's so just about what's finding for you. In this sense of what's right and wrong. It's not black and white, actually. There's several shades of grey in what's right and wrong.
Oh yeah, and with that, being a people pleaser in your past, that's why I was trying to say that can be quite a bit of like ADHD masking off for autistic person. It can be that type of mask, and then so as you're saying that, then with trying to present the best version of yourself, then that does come with having a neurodivergent brain, as we trying to, as you say, there's so many different ways of looking at like certain things, and looking at how human behavior and how you think you're supposed to be. And then if you're trying to piece together the most common ways of doing behavior, that doesn't mean it's right. As you're saying, it's like, even though if you're not, as I said, there's so many like 100 different versions and opinions that you can have on and think like the Oscar slap, as you were saying. But as you're saying that, as you hinting at, majority view might not be the right one. And as you're saying that, it's not like about finding the best self for everyone, but it's like trying to be the best you for yourself, you know, what works for you and who you are.
Exactly. And accepting that your best and perfection are not the same thing. Perfection doesn't exist. Like, I just want to throw that word away. It actually doesn't exist, because what is perfect to me, I just find that really challenging. But being the best version of yourself, which, if your best version of yourself means, listen, I know that every day at 3:00 I need to go and have a nap for an hour, otherwise I'm going to be really cranky in the evening, then that's just you assessing what your needs are in order to be the best version of yourself. Why shouldn't you? If you need a nap at 3 PM, then have the nap if you can.
I was just saying, it's about trying to like learn what negative perspective and stuff like that, and trying to find ways of making them doing self-care. It's, as you're saying, that with you only got diagnosed recently with ADHD, and I can tell that you probably still finding yourself on a learning curve of how to do what's best for yourself, and how to make sure you are making sure you're taking care of what's the best for you.
I'm definitely still learning that. Doing a TV show around the time of your diagnosis, I don't recommend to anybody, because it, like a lot of people will know, if you do something like that's so intense and you've got any kind of there's a massive recharging time that's needed afterwards. And I would say that my recharging time kind of happened after the filming, and then it happened again after the show actually aired. So it really took up a lot of last year for me. So I gave myself the goal of going, okay, New Year is when I'm going to get my head screwed back on, and we're going to try and get back into finding my new routine and establishing those coping mechanisms.
Yeah, the challenge is when you were doing a show, it's like completing the show and doing like all the different tasks and whatever comes of that. And then learning about your ADHD and that side of yourself, getting a diagnosis then, even though it's something that you've known for years. And you like had the idea of knowing yourself as having ADHD, but getting that diagnosis and starting to learn a lot more about it. I guess then it can be quite intense and lot to do with, but as you said, like meeting somebody like Kelly Given and having a person probably with ADHD also on the show with yourself, probably like having that relationship being met, probably to help yourself in that way.
100%. And I always say to people, peer support is one of the best tools that you can have in your toolkit. And whether that is just simply going and following an ADHD or a sensory page on Instagram, or whether that is really getting active in like a support group, whether it's a WhatsApp group or something like that. Anything like that helps you to self-manage is so important. Even if it just comes down to little things like something's happened and you think, God, I bet that only happens to me, and you beat yourself up, ask on the group, and then you get 10 other people pop up, oh no, that happens to me all the time. And it's so reassuring. It helps with the burnout. That would be my one piece of advice to anybody. If you're not doing it, reach out and get involved in some community groups online.
Yeah, that's right. Right, with online and those type of groups, or from the stuff you see on social media, whether it's Twitter and TikTok, it does help yourself. Learned a lot more about myself from that and how much my autism affects myself, because I think before I got diagnosed, or before I was in school anyway when I was diagnosed and in sixth form, I didn't know much about how my autism affects myself, and I wouldn't be that open and honest talking about it to other people. But when I found other people talking about it online and sharing their own experiences, I learned how much more it affects myself and how much it does affect me, and how I can talk about these things and be a bit more open and honest about it. And you do feel less lonely if you like, as you're saying, if you like see a message and message somebody in like one of those chat group, but also if you like scrolling through like social media like TikTok to see like somebody make a video on something about how they autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, whatever affects them, then it just help just to see something like that, and that really does help.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about the internet, isn't it? Because we're not grouped together geographically. It's not like everybody with ADHD all lives in the same village so you can talk to each other. And that's the beautiful thing about finding these communities online, is that you can search based on your need, and you can meet people that understand what you're going through.
One of the questions normally asked at the end, how would you make the world a better place for people who are neurodivergent?
I think for me, it's definitely down to this sort of language and this normalization. And I want to reach a point where you mentioned it, and I don't think I've mentioned it, but I absolutely did have those same feelings as you, as I don't know whether I should talk about this. And that can be in a one-to-one conversation, or especially like I would find maybe in a job interview, you'd be like, am I going to do myself a disservice if I mention this?
Yeah.
And I think what we need to get to is we need to get to a point where everybody is able to talk about it, and talk about it for what it is, and not put that sort of negative tone on it. The best way I can describe what I'm trying to say is, I've met people before who have had a disability in whatever way, a hidden illness, whatever. They legally, their condition classifies as a disability, and those people get very, I'm not disabled, I'm and I'm going, by the letter of the law, technically you classify as disabled. The only reason that you don't like that is because in your mind, disabled is a dirty word. In your mind, disabled means something bad, and that's why you don't want to be associated with it. That's what I want to change, because disabled to me doesn't mean something bad. It doesn't make me less. It makes me a person who is achieving everything that able people are achieving, but I'm doing it with an added challenge. So actually that makes me more. And that's what I want to change. I want to change these negative connotations that come along with some of these words, like disabled, like neurodivergence, like ADHD, because actually they are skills. You just haven't looked at it in the right way. On Instagram, I'm just Miss Balmain. And on TikTok, I'm Real Miss Balmain. So either Real Miss Balmain or Miss Balmain.